my question to you is, why should companies or corporations pivot to the flow system over other trainings, trainers, consultancies, what have you? Like why you guys?
So should they pivot to the flow system, or should they learn what's in the flow system? Because, companies go and say, we're doing Scrum or we're doing Agile. They mean being Agile, but they say doing Agile, I hope. Well, they say doing when I hope they mean being Agile. But what we're sort of helping companies to understand is why Scrum isn't working. And I'll give you a sort of you and your viewers and your subscribers, and push the notification bell, folks. I'm trying to help you, James.
Appreciate
and
it.
so the thing is, you've got more viewers than I have. So one
Go
of the
visit
things
Nigel. Go visit Nigel, people. He's linked on my channel. Go check him out. Anyways.
So one of the Achilles tendon, or the Achilles heel, and that's a sort of a metaphor from mythology. The Achilles heel of Scrum is the product owner. That's why Scrum doesn't work at scale in large organizations. And I'm talking about one of the people who worked with one of the creators and helped in the early days of the development of Scrum at scale. And so one of the biggest areas we use Scrum at scale was in a major organization. And we're known for this online. It was 3M Healthcare. So it's not against any rules to tell you that, because that's public knowledge and I've been cited by them online. But we developed Scrum at scale, or some of the early prototypes of Scrum at scale, within that organization. The product owner forced a major organizational change. How easy do you think it is to walk into an organization and say, you need to change your entire org chart, your org chart, your way, move people around to different parts of the building, change the desk space, change the cubicles configuration, and you need to work in a completely different way now, aligned to value streams with a whole product portfolio organization, which is what the product owner is at scale. Actually, it's just portfolio management in an agile way. How easy do you think that is to do? And that's a rhetorical question. It's damned hard and almost impossible. So you walk into an organization that's got all this hierarchy and all these departments and ways of working and all these inefficient, bad processes, and you slap this person in who's supposed to be the CEO of the product, who nobody can overrule, nobody can defy. They have the final say. They make all the decisions. And this was a person who the other day just went on their first 2-day product owner course. See the problem, yeah? Yep. Just the thing.
Yep.
And even if they're really worldly wise and they've been doing a bunch of stuff for a while and got the piece of paper to validate that in some way, that's the Achilles heel of Scrum. And I'm talking to my friends at high levels in the Scrum world, and saying this is the challenge you've got. It forces an organizational change. If you take the product owner away, what do you think you're left with?
A team doing Scrum, or a set of teams doing Scrum.
Ooh.
without product direction.
Well, they're using the framework to help them organize themselves into a standardized, repeatable process, PDCA, by the way. But they do this standardized, repeatable process, and they've got a board that they might call a Scrum board, but it looks like a very 3-column Kanban board, as the Kanban practitioners would call it. And Kanban means billboard or signboard, so it's not a bad description for the visual control of the work. Mm-hmm. And then you've got some coach, which we call a Scrum Master, and that's what they're supposed to be, a coach. And so what have you got now? I'm testing you here.
Sorry.
So
I was just
no
like,
product owner.
I'm like, without the product owner, it all falls apart in my head. So I'm like, what do we have? I'm like, I'm not sure. No direction, no prioritization. Like,
you've got what people like to call a Kanban team. Because what you've got an intake. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You can prioritize this with service level agreements, operational level agreements, and other priorities from Hoshin plans or portfolio priorities. That all this existing product portfolio management and product management exists. It feeds an intake. There's got to be a priority in the company, even if they're really bad at prioritization, which most of them are. There still has to be do this before you do that. I mean, there's just the reality, yeah?
Yeah, but my head, like, you can't have Scrum without the product owner is in my head. Well, so I'm like, what do we have? I'm like, I don't know. Is there a name for it? It's not Scrum. So that's what I was thinking.
Well, that because it's, as Ken says, the rules of Scrum are immutable, which means they're mandatory. Yeah. You take one thing away from Scrum, it's no longer Scrum. You may call it Scrum, and that's what a lot of people do, by the way. They don't do Scrum properly. So the reality of it is that most organizations, it's not the delivery side of the organization that's actually the biggest problem. So the people who actually do the work, the execution of the work, and the team members and the teams that actually do the work is actually not the biggest problem. What the biggest problem is this gigantic ball of bureaucracy organized into towers of power we call silos, and all the decades of hideousness there that can't make a decision. And then what we do is we walk in and go, we're going to stick some product owners there who are junior roles, by the way. They're not vice presidents, even though the Scrum purists would say there must be a vice president that's the product owner. Now, let me tell you, I work with a lot of executives. If I give them a pad of Post-it notes and a Sharpie and say, your job is now to write user stories, you can imagine what they'll say to me, Words that we won't broadcast,
Yeah,
so there's
on
your
this
problem.
channel, please,
So what ends up happening is the product owner and the Scrum Master end up become synonymous with sort of team managers and sort of, something like that. And that's not to decry Scrum. I believe in Scrum strongly. It's in here. Scrum the Toyota way fits in here, because I still think it's one of the best patterns for a team to do standardized, repeatable work. And I've described this, I know, once to you, and you've sort of pulled a face at me when I said it's PDCA with time boxes and a Kanban board, but it is. And all right, you've got a couple of defined roles, which are even more loosely defined now with the latest Scrum guide. You've got a team of people do stuff, but we don't tell you how to be a team, but it's a team of people that does stuff. Awesome. And there's a product goal now, which is a distal goal. And you've got your proximal goal, which is your sprint goal, which if you read some of this stuff, you'll understand what I'm talking about there. And that's all in here as well, by the way. Proximal and distal goals are all in there. And that's all to do with organizational goals, product level goals, team level goals. So this is where the Achilles heel comes in. So rather than go and fight companies and organizations and say, thou shalt do these rules that are immutable in Scrum and thou shalt obey, which is what Craig does, Craig Larman from Less, and I know Craig reasonably well, we bump into each other periodically, brilliant computer scientist, different type of person, brilliant computer scientist, and people who know him all know what I mean by that. And I have trust me, I have a great deal of respect for Craig and to Baz as well, who's Baz Voda is his business partner in Less. Less is brilliant. Truly, Less is one of the best ever implementations of Scrum. Everybody should take the course and study it because it's three days of learning with Craig, and all but the last 2 hours is all about Toyota. And the last 2 hours is about Scrum. And I'm telling you, because I've been through his courses, I've been on his courses, and he's a brilliant, I've had dinner with him. He makes me laugh immensely. He and I presented at different events and bumped into each other. The problem with Less, you obey the rules or he walks away. So how many companies do you think are going to walk? You're going to walk in and go, you will obey me. I am in control. You will do exactly what I say, the way I say it, or it won't work and I leave. Well, if you do exactly what I say, of course it'll work. That's the whole point, So, but you can't do that in companies. So I've given up trying to fight companies, and I've given up trying to tell them what they're doing wrong.
I'm sure my viewers will be very happy to hear that.
Yeah, because it's painful. And I wrote the other day that I'm no longer going to be consultants tend to turn out to what I wrote the other day as being insultants. And it's my friend in Puerto Rico actually gave me that little anecdote, because what happens, we get called in as a consultant, and if people are watching this, we're dealing with companies, especially trainers and coaches and people who run their small coaching businesses, trying to get business with organizations. They go in there and everybody, they do some swish presentation, the glossies come out. I don't even do glossy brochures anymore. I send them a few bullet points on an email and said, if this is of interest, let's have a conversation before I get into MSAs and negotiations. It's pointless writing a 45-page deck of PowerPoint misery and telling them why you're so great. I say, this is what you said you wanted. These are the options I can offer you. And that's like a lean proposal. And it's literally 4 or 5 bullet points. These are the ideas and these are the prices. If these are in the ballpark, let's go into a deeper conversation. But you walk into an organization, you do all your glossy song and dance, and you sort of, what they call the dog and pony show. And then the company starts pasting platitudes all over the wall, cliche statements, our mission is to serve.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Yeah.
What the hell does that all mean? So, and you can't translate that into actions and doing. It's just statements, save the world, feed the hungry and all this sort of thing. And so then we after they've done all that stuff and it's on the wall, so it becomes wallpaper, and people outside of the US are more familiar with wallpaper than people in the US who just paint walls. My house is painted like every other American home. And then so when things are on the wall, they merge into the wallpaper and they become invisible. Nobody sees them anymore, because they're just so familiar, they don't even look at them anymore. So we've got all our great statements of how we're going to change the world and all our platitudes and this organizational transformation. And if you watch some of my keynotes, you'll know that word is the totally incorrect word to use. It has no relevance in organizational change initiatives or in digital transformation, another load of nonsense. Digital transformation is modernization, just for the viewers. It's not transformation, which means to turn something from one thing into something completely different. So if you're a bank and you want to become a gas station or a petrol station in England, that's transformation. But if you're a bank that wants to evolve, that's modernization, evolution. And if you're moving from doing traditional management techniques to new management techniques, that's transition. So just a few words from the dictionary, and go look them up if you don't believe me. So anyway, platitudes. Then we all dance around and we high five and we fist bump and all the rest of it. We get all excited. We do a bunch of training, which lasts about 6 to 9 months, train a bunch of people, and we make millions of dollars from the training, or hundreds of thousands of dollars, whatever it is. And that's often referred to as the swoop and boop approach. And I thank my friend Ellen Gottessteiner, a brilliant product owner, deep expert in product management, product ownership. So do look her up, Ellen Gottessteiner. But you swoop in, you do a bit of thing, you fly away, and you go, good luck. So that's the training model, yeah? And that's what, it makes a lot of money. But then what happens is, then the companies are floundering. So you're going like me as a consultant. You go and listen to them, platitude, 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 pat on the back. Then you go train all the troops. Then we get the scrum masters, the agile coaches, the other people coaching those troops, the people on the front line, the people who execute and do the value generation. Because trust me, up there's little value generation. It's all happening down here, by the way. And so we're doing all the value generation. And then after a few weeks or a few months of doing this, we've got our Kanban boards. We're using some of our value stream mapping, some other visualization techniques, now Wardley mapping and other things in there. And we start to make visible all the ugly stuff. We're turning over the rocks, and all the constraints and the bottlenecks in the system are becoming visible. All the inefficiencies and the dysfunctions in the organization are now becoming visible. And as Ken Schwaber, I'm paraphrasing something he once said, but Scrum is like your mother-in-law. If you invite her to stay, even though she loves you very much, she'll point out all your faults. And that's what Scrum does. But Scrum does it with a great big hammer, because it goes in and forces organizational change. The organization can't function, and everybody says Scrum doesn't work here. No. Your organization doesn't work. It's not Scrum. Scrum works fine if you do it, but it's too hard. It's too brutal. It's too hammer cracking a walnut. It's too aggressive. Same as less. It's just hideously aggressive. Now, some less practitioners, Gene in New York, who I know very well, is a fantastic less trainer and advocate. He'd argue with me some of that, but he and I have had some good discussions, and he really gets these things. So then what happens is, I tell our consultant, the royal consultant, we tell the organization, here's all your problems. This all sucks. You need to fix all these things.
Yeah.
So what am I now doing? I'm now insulting the company. So they called me in to consult with me, but they get offended, because if I say the workers suck, let's do all this fixing the workers. They go, oh yeah, Nigel, go fix the workers. They all suck. Yeah. But when I say, hey, executive or boss, big manager or big VP, you suck, they don't like that, because I'm saying, well, you need to change. And they really don't like that very much, because it's actually not the work that's complex. It's actually not these poor souls who are actually working every day really hard to deliver value to customers. It's actually the organizational design that is the problem. And so when you go into companies, what we want to do now is provide a level of education and understanding and a level of tooling to help them visualize and what we call learn to see. And so it's work as done versus work as imagined, because they've all got this notion of how work gets done. We write out a post-it note, magically something pops out the other end. And all those problems in the middle, well, just go figure them out. Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And people who say that should be fired. They're just not good managers or leaders, because their job as a more experienced executive leader manager is to solve problems for those who are less experienced. Managers should be problem solvers. And there's one of the concepts in the flow system, we didn't invent it, which is known as boundary spanning, or the boundary spanner, the person or people who interface between multiple teams and the boundaries, or the outer edges of these various different teams and systems, and they become functional leadership, helping the organization solve these bottlenecks, constraints, and dysfunctions. Because most teams, you go down and fiddle around a little bit, teach them a bit of standardized, repeatable process, PDCA, continuous improvement, Scrum, and teach them how to use a few visualization techniques like Kanban, value stream mapping, and that type of thing. And then you give a bit of what the industry calls OPEX, operational excellence. You teach them some skills to make them be able to be really super duper efficient at delivering value and good outcomes. And there's a difference between efficiency and effectiveness. So you go and do all that. Sure. Then what happens is all the rest of their problems are dependencies. And those dependencies are on the organizational design. So legal, financial, procurement, vendor management, compliance.
Not just the VP, right?
Yeah.
Just saying, for anyone's watching, it's not just it for that. There's other stuff too.
No, exactly. So they get all these problems that are now external to the team or the product delivery organization. And the organizational structure has been badly designed because everything's organized vertically.
Yep.
Towers of power, VP, lots of worker bees who apparently report to the VP. And let me tell you, you don't report to the VP. Only 2 or 3 people report to the VP. There's this whole hierarchy of reporting to somebody. And none of this is creating any value, by the way. It's just, creating meetings and process and documentation and lots of reply all emails and things. And so what happens is we need to cut across this organizational units. And so when you start using Scrum or Kanban techniques or any of these, you make all this visible. But none of these can fix this. So what we're bringing here is an explanation and understanding of that problem and this interconnected, intertwined nature of the triple helix. So organizations start to see that they need to fix it. So my job is no longer to tell the organization what's wrong. My job is to teach the organization the skills necessary so they can see what's wrong. They can then choose whether to pull that and take appropriate action to solve it. If they choose not to, it's not the fault of some tool, method, technique, or approach. And this is not a framework, remember, it's just a system of learning and understanding. And so it's down to the organization to decide to take the action. I can tell you from 2-3 decades of experience, very few of them will. And this is where, not because of the people trying to do it, not to the Scrum and Agile coaches and the Lean coaches and the Kanban practitioners and all these types of folks. They're trying, but we're trying to punch the organization rather than show the organization how to learn to it's the whole teach a man to fish sort of analogy. We're going in there fishing for them. What we need to do is to stop doing that, teach them how to fish, and then guide them with a little bit of gentle coaching and mentoring to be able to know where to fish and how to solve the problem.
So again, I'm going to go back to reflective listening here as I do on my other videos, hopefully. And I'm going to ask just a clarifying question of and this is what I'm hearing is that, you made some pretty strong remarks about VPs and, the organizations really at the upper levels really desiring to change. And so what I'm hearing is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're planning on coming into organizations, not only helping and giving tools like Scrum and Kanban to the lower levels that actually will help the flow of value through the system, but also helping after you help to do that, but helping bring light to those problems that the organization needs to change and really educating them on tools and resources that will be able to foster those changes and help emphasize why they need to do those.
No, absolutely. And so, we talked a bit before when we last spoke about companies getting engaged and whether companies are warming to what we're teaching here. And so I've spoken to a number of different groups. I can't name them all for confidentiality reasons, but I'm working with international banks in 2 different continents. I'm working with large companies in let's just say in different industries that are pulling on this. I'm working with consulting companies. We've got academic endorsement from a European university who are teaching the next generation of leaders who are going through MBA programs. This is now 3 semesters worth of study. Organizations are understanding that learning Scrum and Agile techniques aren't enough. The learning and some of the Agile practitioners are now warming to this and starting to talk about this. We're talking about business agility, having organizational agility, the ability to respond rapidly to markets, changing conditions, things like COVID, respond quickly. And it's like, the analogy is like the ship that's stuck in the Suez Canal as we're recording this. How quickly can you turn the ship? Yeah. If it takes you 3 weeks to free it and 2 weeks to turn it around, that's not very agile. Yeah.
No.
So if your competitors come out with some disruptive innovation, is it going to take you 3 years to catch them? Tesla, the Model 3 disruptive innovator there, if you understand a little bit about Clay Christensen's work. So they're now completely decimating and disrupting the automotive industry. Everybody's taking years to catch up, including my ex-employers at Toyota. And now we've got Volkswagen, who've got, despite all their Dieselgate challenges, they've still got a ton of money. New CEO, because I think he's in jail now. And if I'm wrong on that, it's just my opinion. But the thing is this, you've got you've got companies like VW who have gone toe to toe with Toyota over the years about being the biggest selling automotive manufacturer, who are now catching up to Tesla. And so, but it's taken how many years to get anywhere near catching up to them and bring out equivalent or potentially better products?
Too long.
And so, and Tesla's an aspirational sort of, product, and that's why people are excited. So, business agility and organizational agility is how fast can we pivot and catch these disruptive innovators?
Yeah.
When you're talking about product agility, if I pull out my iPhone, and we know that the iPhones tend to be technically behind the Android products, but this is better, more stable, high quality, and lots of reasons. I probably have lots of arguments with Android fans about. But the reality is, the Samsungs of this world and the Huawei, or whatever you pronounce the Chinese brand that begins with the H, they I can never pronounce that. Anyway, they come out and innovate really fast, new ideas, and it takes Apple time to catch up because they want it to be qualitative, not just quantitative. But that's what product agility is all about. How fast can you pivot your product and move more quickly? So a lot of the things that and you need to do to enable that in your organization, you're not going to find in an Agile or a Scrum class, I'm sorry to say, because they're just teaching a defined particular way of doing things. What we're doing is providing the tools and the knowledge behind the tools and the techniques and the deeper understanding at an educational level of the things organizations need to understand to be able to solve these problems holistically and actually deliver more effectively to their customers. Because as Drucker said, without a customer, the rest of it doesn't exist. There's only one purpose of a company, and that's to create a customer.
Which is who we're talking to, hopefully, right? So
yeah, exactly. Because the thing is this, if you forget about this thing, there's actually no reason for the rest to exist. And some people say, oh, employees first. Well, I'm sorry, but without a customer, there are no employees. Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just as Scrum, obviously is, caught fire and, over the last 20 years or so become more and more prevalent because of how quickly people are able to pivot and the idea of business agility and product agility and so forth. The flow system, and can you imagine, like, yes, just because we've sent people to a 2-day class and they've studied Scrum and they've become Scrum masters, how much that idea of Scrum and how much that was able to do. I mean, just imagine. I mean, I guess I'll throw it up on the screen and post, but the flow system has levels and levels and levels of deep knowledge. How much more if we helped our employees? I speak as, as a company here to really help people know the depth and breadth of this knowledge and education. How much more and the faster could you pivot? how much, how much better products would you create? All these kinds of things come to mind. And so if anyone is interested, I do have links to these trainings if you want to take a closer look, and a discount code, of course, which Nigel has allowed me to give you all for 10% off if you are interested. But on to one of my, I guess, harder questions here.